Hi and welcome to another tutorial. In today's lesson we'll learn how to recreate this cool looking circle typography text effect using Adobe After Effects. So anyways guys, let's jump in. So the first thing that we have to do here is we have to create a new composition. 1920 by 1080 pixels will be fine at a duration of about 10 seconds. Just press OK. The next thing that we need to do is we need to come over here and create a new text layer. So I'm just putting in some random words, creative typography design, and I'm separating them by this little dash or hyphen over here. And the font that I'm using is Vajala 1, and I've just brought down the spacing in between the characters and I've made it all caps. You're free to use whatever you like, but these are my settings. So once we've got that, the next thing that we need to do is I'm just going to come over here and I'm just going to click on this title action safe button just so I can see the middle point here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I'm on this text layer. I'm going to come over here to the ellipse tool. I'm going to zoom in just so I can see, and I'm going to hold Control, Alt and Shift, and I'm going to draw an ellipse, just something like that. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to text and I'm going to open up the path options and I'm going to change the path to mask 1. And now you can see that you have the text inside the circle. So we don't want it inside the circle, so we're just going to come down here to reverse path. And now if I click on that, it's going to put the text on the outside of the circle. But now we've got a big space here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over here, grab my selection tool, highlight all of my text, and just increase my font size until I'm happy with a complete circle like that. So now I'm pretty happy with that. The next thing that I need to do over here is I'm just going to make sure that I align it to the center of my document. And just to double check, I'm just going to hold Control and double click the pan behind anchor point tool, which is going to make sure that the anchor point is in the middle. And then I'm just going to align it just to keep it safe. So now we need to animate this. So to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come down here to first margin and just click on the stopwatch, move forward to the end of the composition, and then just bump that up to, let's say, 2000. So if you've done that correctly, now you will have some motion to your text. Now, if you want it to go slower, all you have to do is change this end keyframe and you can put it to whatever you like. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rename that layer and I'm going to call it fill, because we're going to use a stroke and a fill and then we're going to duplicate them. So this is going to be our fill layer. I'm just going to duplicate that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that I hold Shift while clicking on this point over here, and just make sure that you put the text underneath. So now what we need to do here is firstly we need to make sure that we change it to a stroke, and I've just left the stroke settings at around about 4 pixels. And now if you preview them, if you like that look, you can keep it if you want, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up U and I'm just going to delete these keyframes and I'm going to put this animation in reverse. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to start on a different value just so that the text is not exactly the same. So I've put it as 500. So I'm just coming over here, I'm going to hit the stopwatch at 500 and then I'm going to move to the end of the composition and I'm going to change it to negative 1500. And so now if you play that back together, now you've got 2 different rotating circles of text, and that's looking pretty cool. Now the next thing that we need to do is I'm just going to label that one stroke so I know which one is which. So now that we've renamed that layer stroke, I'm just going to add a fill effect and change that color. So I'm just here in color hunt and this is going to be my color palette. So I'm just going to be choosing this orange and I'm just going to be using it for the stroked text in my design. So now once we've done that, all we need to do is just duplicate the fill effects, and then we just need to separate them by going fill and then stroke and then fill and then stroke. So for example, if I go to stroke, I can put that in there and then I can duplicate fill again. Cool. So now once you've got all of your layers, and if you preview that, you can see that they all rotate and that's looking pretty cool. So So now what we need to do is we need to pre-compose all of those layers together. So I'm just going to right click, go to pre-compose, and I'll just press enter. Now that we've got that, the next thing that we can do is we can add a scale in effect. So all I'm going to do is press S on my keyboard, hit the stopwatch, move forward to the end of my composition, and then just bring that up to, let's say, 135. So now if you go back and you preview that, it's nearly looking like a tunnel because it's moving forward as well. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that we're on that layer, and I'm just going to come down here and grab the ellipse tool. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to find that middle point, hold Control, Alt and Shift, and I'm just going to draw an ellipse just over that last little circle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to the mask options over here, and I'm just going to go to subtract, and then I'm going to open up the mask settings, and I'm just going to increase the feather just so it looks like it's fading out. So I'm just going to leave it at around 8 or 9 pixels. So that's looking pretty good. Now the final thing that we need to do is we need to add our text box. So I'm just going to come over here, I'm just going to create a new text layer, and I'm going to make sure that it's a solid color, and I'm just going to bump up the size a little bit. And now once you have that, then what you need to do is make sure that you're on that text layer. You need to look for a few effects. The first one is going to be choker, and so we're going to get simple choker, and we're going to change the view to matte, and that puts a box around the text. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for another effect called Minimax, and I'm just going to change the channel to alpha, and I'm just going to increase the radius because I want this box to be a little bit bigger than the actual text. And then finally, to change the color, I am going to use another effect which is called tint, and I'm going to use the same orange that I had before. And so now if you go back to that text, what's really cool about this is that if you go and change the font size, the box actually changes with it. So I think that looks pretty cool. So now that you have your text, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to animate it. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to pre-compose that text. So I'm just going to call it text. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that that layer is selected. I'm going to come over here and grab the rectangle tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a rectangle, and I'm going to make sure that it covers the top and bottom of that text. Now, I only want it to appear there because then I'm going to actually animate it. So I'm going to open up the mask properties over here, and I'm just going to click on the stopwatch for mask path. I'm going to move forward in time to, let's say, 1 second. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the selection tool, and I'm only going to change these two items. So I'm going to click and drag, and then I'm going to hold shift, and now that will reveal the text. So now when I go and preview that, firstly, I'm just going to easy ease these keyframes, and I'm just going to bring the 2 points for this a little bit closer together so it gives it some acceleration. Now if you don't see that, please make sure that you're in the speed graph, and you just have to click this button over here once you've easy eased your frames. But now if we preview that, you will see that now it's got a very nice and snappy animation to it. So now that you have your text layer, the next thing and the final thing that you need to do is you just need to align it to the middle of your composition. And so if you want to change the scale or anything like that, you can, and you're free to do whatever you want with it. So you can add another line if you want. You just have to duplicate it here in the project settings. So the final thing that I'm going to add to this design is I'm just going to add a new adjustment layer, and I'm going to search for the effect noise, and I'm just going to bring that up to about 7%, just so there's a little bit of noise on that, and that's about it. So anyways guys, that's about it for this lesson. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you guys next time.